There's a truth that almost no man admits, but everyone feels. You can be kind, polite, hardworking, the right guy, and still never arouse desire in any woman. And before you think that's your fault, I'm going to tell you something brutal, something nobody dares to say. Being a good man doesn't arouse desire. It never has. It never will. And Machiavelli would explain exactly why. Most men try to win over women with affection when women respond to impact. They try to win love through logic when desire is born in the shadows. They try to prove their worth when the only thing that truly works is projecting silent emotional strength. And the most ironic thing? There is nothing more repellent to a woman than a man who tries too hard. This is basic psychic politics, and Machiavelli already warned, reality is more important than the ideal. What you're going to learn here has nothing to do with cheap manipulation, cheesy phrases, or childish games. This is about understanding how the female mind really works, beneath the surface, in the territory where Jung and Machiavelli shake hands. And when you understand this, something strange happens. Women who previously ignored you begin to notice your presence, your energy changes, your posture changes, and they feel it. They always feel it. Today, you're going to discover the forbidden method, not because it's wrong, but because nobody wants you to know. A dark method because it defies the politically correct narrative, but profoundly true because it's guided by real human nature. And if you stick around until the end, you'll understand exactly why some men ignite instant desire, while others, even after trying everything, remain stuck in the friend zone. Let's begin. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos. It's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder you are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. There's a silent pain that almost every man carries in his heart, but few admit. The feeling of being invisible to the woman he desires. He tries to be polite, tries to be kind, tries to be the right guy, and ends up becoming exactly what Machiavelli would call a politically harmless figure. Predictable, docile, guided by ideals instead of human reality. This is the classic mistake of the nice guy, who believes that desire is born from kindness, when in fact, desire is born from tension, mystery, and what decisions based on real human nature activate in the female subconscious. While he offers flowers, another man offers presents. While he asks for attention, another creates inevitability. It's cruel, yes, but that's how politics guided by reality, not ideals, works. Here, does the end justify the means? Not in a moral sense, but in a psychological sense. If the goal is to create desire, it's no use using means that only produce friendship. The man who doesn't understand this ends up hating his own reflection and wishing to be feared or loved when he should first learn to avoid being hated by himself. And it is precisely here that the abyss is born, that separates those who arouse desire from those who become good friends. The uncomfortable truth is that some women intensely desire certain men, not because they are more handsome or richer, but because they possess the virtù that Machiavelli described: presence, intention, direction, and a calculated use of emotional force, not physical force, force of posture, of silence, of positioning. The nice guy tries to convince through gentleness, but boundless gentleness becomes subservience, and subservience kills the magnetic field of desire. He gives everything away before being chosen. He talks too much before being noticed. He reveals himself completely before she feels curious. Meanwhile, the man who awakens passion operates as one who understands virtù and fortuna. He doesn't control everything, but he controls what matters, himself. He knows that the end justifies the means when the end is to keep his energy preserved, and the means is constant adaptability, not disorganized vulnerability. And without realizing it, he activates something that most men have never learned to access, the female unconscious, where desire truly originates. The most painful thing is realizing that many rejected men never failed for lack of effort. They failed because of the wrong strategy. They tried to win the game with rules that nobody respects. They tried to conquer with logic what only responds to emotion. They tried to negotiate what can only be provoked. And in the absence of this understanding, they fell into the famous friend zone, where their energy becomes a kind of mercenary army. Useful, but never valued. Machiavelli would say that one's own loyal armies are the only ones that truly sustain power. And in the realm of desire, the own army is the ability to maintain one's emotional integrity. The man who seeks approval loses himself. The one who seeks surrender creates attraction. The one who fears silence loses authority. The one who masters silence creates presence. And when he understands that predictability is the enemy of desire, he begins to see that there is a hidden code guiding the dynamics of the feminine, a code that almost nobody teaches, but that completely transforms the game when understood. That's when the door to the next level opens. When a man finally accepts that female desire doesn't originate in logic, but in the unconscious, many things begin to make sense. He realizes that no matter how much he argues, explains, proves his worth, or sends affectionate messages, none of that activates what truly matters. Machiavelli would say that all politics guided by reality requires first understanding human nature, and female nature responds to stimuli that escape reason. Desire isn't conquered like a well-structured negotiation, but provoked like a song that plays before anyone even realizes it. That's why the nice guy, full of good intentions, fails. He tries to access an emotional system using rational tools. He tries to buy something that isn't for sale. He tries to convince someone who isn't listening. And meanwhile, men who understand the game work silently with virtù and fortuna, knowing that the unconscious responds to signals, not speeches. A woman doesn't desire someone who overpresents herself. She desires someone who makes her imagination work. The classic mistake is believing that kindness generates desire. Kindness generates comfort. It generates friendship. It generates gratitude, but it doesn't ignite fire. Machiavelli would warn that the end justifies the means only when the means actually produce the desired end. And using kindness to awaken passion is like trying to light a fire with ice. The man who tries too hard to please shows, without realizing it, that he wants more than he offers. He gives endless attention, constant validation, and receives indifference. He becomes too predictable to be desired. On the other hand, the man who creates strategic emotional tension activates something that many didn't even know existed. Non-negotiable desire, which is born in mystery and feeds on uncertainty. This man understands that avoiding being hated is important, but being loved by force is impossible. He bets on constant adaptability, adjusts his energy according to the moment, uses silence as a weapon, and lets her unconscious complete what he doesn't say. And it is in this silence that desire awakens. The central concept is simple yet profound. Desire is activated, not negotiated. It arises when something internal reacts to an emotional stimulus, not when she acknowledges that you're a nice guy. This is why books like Women Who Run with the Wolves, if read attentively, reveal this archetypal pattern. The feminine desires what moves her, not what accommodates her. Consider a practical example. The man who interrupts his own life to always be available communicates a lack of self-worth, while the man who maintains his rituals, training, friendships, and projects transmits his own loyal armies, inner strength. She feels it. It doesn't need explaining. And when a man understands this, he stops trying to conquer through what he does and starts attracting through who he is. This movement activates the part of the psyche where fantasy and biology meet, where the end justifies the means because the means are simply authenticity. And it is precisely at this point that we begin to touch on something deeper, the primitive psychology of pleasure, where Jung and Machiavelli meet. When Jung said that much of human behavior originates in the hidden regions of the psyche, he was describing exactly where desire resides. It is not rational. It is not educated. It is not civilized. It is primitive. And Machiavelli, on the other side of the story, understood that any politics guided by reality needs to consider these subterranean forces. Therefore, when a man tries to seduce only with logical arguments, he is speaking to a part of the mind that does not control desire. Pleasure is born from instincts, not from polite conversations. It is born from archetypes. The hunter, the warrior, the leader, the one who carries virtue, not from the nice guy. The end justifies the means when the means are aligned with human nature, not with modern fantasies of sanitized romance. A woman reacts to what moves her from within, to what touches her ancestral impulses. That is why certain looks, silences, and postures activate responses that she herself cannot explain. It is not magic, it is emotional biology. And whoever understands this stops asking and starts provoking. The primitive psychology of pleasure says that what most awakens the feminine is the sensation of being in the presence of a man who could be dangerous, but chooses not to be. Jung would call this contact with the shadow, the part of the man that contains strength, libido, symbolic aggression, and which, when integrated, transmits power without violence. Machiavelli would say that it is better to be feared than loved when love is fragile and admiration is shallow. But he would also warn, avoiding being hated is a crucial rule. And what does this mean in the realm of desire? It means that a woman feels attracted to a man who carries fire but does not burn, who possesses strength but controls it, who has his own loyal armies, his discipline, his rituals, his presence, but does not display them as a threat. This mixture of virtu and fortuna creates a magnetism that cannot be taught rationally. It is felt, it is perceived, it is ancestral, and when she enters this magnetic field, her logic shuts down. It is the unconscious that takes the wheel. When we say that pleasure is archetypal, it means that it responds to stories much older than any modern relationship. That's why films like The Wolf of Wall Street or characters like Thomas Shelby fascinate so many women, not because of destructive behavior, but because of inner energy, emotional dominance, and the calculated use of force. This is the kind of figure that activates deep psychological memories in women's instincts, leadership, direction, intensity. But unlike what many think, it's not about becoming a character. It's about integrating one's own potential. This is where Jung meets Machiavelli. The unconscious responds to the archetype, and the archetype responds to human reality. When a man accesses this layer, he understands why certain touches, short words, or simple gestures awaken sensations in her that she herself cannot name. He learns to touch places in the psyche where even she didn't know she lived with desire. And this understanding opens the way to observing how this works in the real world. in the lives of ordinary men who have learned this code without realizing it. He wasn't handsome. He didn't have the physique others flaunted at the gym. He didn't wear expensive clothes, and he certainly didn't seem like someone who would naturally arouse desire. He was an ordinary man, the kind society often ignores. But there was something about him that always caught her attention, something Machiavelli would immediately recognize as virtue, presence, posture, and a politics guided by reality, not romantic ideals. He didn't try to force connections. He didn't chase approval. He didn't turn kindness into a bargaining chip. While others competed for attention, he always seemed comfortable in himself. And that confused her, because the end justifies the means only when a man projects inner security, not neediness. This ordinary man never sought to be loved. He preferred to be noticed. He never asked for space. He occupied his own. And that was exactly what made women, seemingly out of his league, look at him with curiosity, as if trying to decipher a secret. His true distinguishing feature lay in the way he observed. He didn't look as one who evaluates, but as one who understands. He didn't listen as one who waits for their turn to speak, but as one who decodes. He had a habit of noticing micro-expressions, variations in voice, contradictions in discourse, exactly like someone who deeply understands decisions based on real human nature. And when he spoke, it seemed that each word had a calculated weight, not forced, but firm. Machiavelli would call this the calculated use of force, not physical force, but psychological force. A presence that doesn't invade, but dominates the space effortlessly. Unlike the nice guy who gives endless attention expecting reciprocity, he offered selective intensity, a look that hinted at something, then silence that made her imagine. A deep conversation followed by strategic absence, a pointed question followed by a brief smile. This alternation created emotional dopamine. She found herself thinking about him when she didn't want to. And that's where desire truly begins. When asked what his secret was, he would simply laugh. He would say, "I don't seek approval, I seek surrender." And that phrase carried the entire philosophy behind his way of operating. Surrender here wasn't physical submission, but emotional surrender. That feeling that makes a woman think, this man knows exactly who he is. He knew that his own loyal armies are the only ones that sustain power, and his armies were his habits, his consistency, his calmness. He didn't try to impress. He tried to understand. He didn't try to convince, he tried to touch. And so he activated fantasies in her that she didn't even consciously recognize. For him, constant adaptability was the rule, not the exception. He knew when to approach and when to distance himself, when to speak and when to let silence work for him. And this understanding opens the way for the first great pillar, mystery, the end of predictability, where passion truly begins to exist. If there's a universal law in female desire, it's this: predictability kills passion. And that's not an opinion, it's psychology. When a man opens up completely right from the start, telling everything about his life, his feelings, his fears, his plans, he commits what Machiavelli would call a fatal political error, handing over the map of his own territory before consolidating power. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, always leaves blank spaces, ambiguous zones, areas that require interpretation. The man who exposes himself too much loses his charm because he eliminates the most valuable element of the game, mystery. The end justifies the means when the end is to maintain emotional presence, and the means, here, is to avoid being an open book. The open book seems like honesty, but it's often disguised anxiety. What impacts desire is not what he reveals, but what she needs to decipher, and it is in this decoding effort that the female brain engages, invests, connects, without even realizing it. Strategic ambivalence is not manipulation, It's an understanding of human nature. It's understanding that giving everything all the time destroys value. Machiavelli said that a wise leader keeps part of his virtue invisible, accessible only to those who have proven themselves worthy. In the realm of desire, it works the same way. The man who always says yes, who responds immediately, who makes himself available at any cost, creates the feeling that he has already conquered everything without lifting a finger, and everything that comes without effort loses importance. The man who controls his time, his energy, and his attention operates with a calculated use of force. He offers presence, but doesn't give himself completely. He allows connection, but preserves mystery. He creates closeness, but maintains strategic distance. It's not about playing hardball, but about not being easily read, because being easily read means losing value. It means becoming predictable. It means ceasing to be exciting and becoming comfortable, and comfort is the opposite of passion. When a man understands that emotional tension fuels desire, he stops fearing silence and begins to use it. He realizes that his own loyal armies, discipline, self-control, focus, are more seductive than any desperate attempt to please. The tension arises when she senses that something in him is inaccessible, that there's a part she needs to conquer, not just receive. This slight imbalance awakens curiosity, dopamine, and imagination, three pillars that the female unconscious loves to work with. And this is where Machiavelli and Jung shake hands. The woman desires the man who activates her psyche, not the one who delivers everything ready-made. Constant adaptability reinforces this, knowing when to appear and when to disappear, when to speak and when to let silence have an impact. This mystery creates such a strong magnetic field that it prepares the ground for the next element that awakens desire even more intensely: silent sexual authority. Silent sexual authority has nothing to do with brute dominance or performed arrogance. It has to do with presence, with that posture that doesn't beg, doesn't force, doesn't try to impress. It's the energy of a man who knows that politics guided by reality works best when leadership is perceived, not announced. He doesn't need to say he's confident, it's perceptible in his gaze. He doesn't need to say he knows what he wants, it's implicit in the rhythm of his voice. Machiavelli would explain this as the calculated use of force, minimal, precise, emotional. The end justifies the means when the end is to convey security, and the means is not to exaggerate. A woman feels this immediately. Her body recognizes it even before her mind interprets it, because the unconscious reacts to what is solid, not to what is theatrical. Many men fail precisely because they try to appear strong, when what really works is appearing calm. And tranquility in the masculine is the highest form of power. The man with silent authority doesn't ask permission to exist. He suggests it with certainty. He occupies space naturally, like someone who knows that his own loyal armies, his values, his routine, his focus already sustain his inner power. He doesn't justify himself, doesn't over-explain, doesn't try to translate every gesture to guarantee acceptance. He simply acts. And it is this naturalness that she interprets as emotional leadership. Jung would say that this type of man activates the archetype of the king, not through dominance, but through stability. Machiavelli would add, "It is better to be feared than loved when love is fragile." But the true master avoids being hated by maintaining calm, humor, and elegance. This kind of balance creates a sensuality that doesn't need to be announced. She feels it in the way he walks, in the way he touches his own glass, in the way he maintains silence without discomfort. Nothing is more magnetic than a man comfortable with his own strength. And here's the crucial point. Silent authority isn't about speaking little. It's about speaking correctly. It's not about acting a lot. It's about acting at the right time. It's constant adaptability applied to seduction. While the nice guy talks non-stop to avoid silence, the man with virtue lets silence work for him. While the insecure man fiddles with his phone to avoid seeming idle, the centered man remains still, looking around as if observing life with clarity. This behavior directly touches the female unconscious because it signals dominance, mastery of oneself, of the environment, of the surrounding energy. She feels she is facing someone who could use force but chooses not to, who could be intense but prefers control, who could conquer through pressure but conquers through presence. This creates a tension that isn't yet sexual, it's pre-sexual. It's the spark that prepares the ground for the next stage of desire, the game of challenge and containment. If mystery breeds curiosity and silent authority creates presence, then challenge creates movement. And movement, for the female psyche, is almost always desire. The most common mistake men make is believing that being easy, available, and invariably present will make her value their commitment. In practice, the opposite happens. Machiavelli already warned, everything offered without cost loses meaning, and everything predictable loses political force. In the realm of desire, it works the same way. The man who presents himself as an overly accessible prize ends up generating emotional boredom. He doesn't stimulate her limbic system, doesn't activate dopamine, doesn't awaken her imagination. But the man who balances interest with limits, presence with distance, connection with selectivity, this man operates with a calculated use of emotional force. He knows that the end justifies the means when the end is to maintain magnetism, and the means is strategic difficulty, not to manipulate, but to prevent the connection from dying due to excessive ease. Excessive generosity kills desire. Excessive availability turns into disguised desperation, and excessive expectation destroys any chance of emotional tension. Machiavelli would say, it is better to be feared than loved when love is fragile. And here, to be feared simply means to be unpredictable, to be a little difficult, to be a challenge. But an elegant challenge, not a childish one. The woman needs to feel that there is something in him that requires emotional effort to conquer, but also that this effort will be rewarded. This is exactly what Jung would call the archetypal reinforcement of desire. The feminine desires what grows slowly, not what is handed to her on a silver platter. Therefore, the man who creates a slight scarcity, not responding immediately, not canceling his own life to please, not saying yes to everything, becomes more interesting. He practices constant adaptability, showing that his life is rich, full, with his own loyal armies that do not revolve around it. This immediately increases his value. And here comes the most advanced part: letting her invest, letting her pursue, letting her conquer. Because when she invests emotionally, she gets involved. When she pursues, she connects. When she conquers, she values. This is the point where the challenge meets the restraint. Not giving everything, but also not taking everything away. Not chasing after, but also not disappearing. Not handing over the prize, but showing that there is a prize. Machiavelli would call this maintaining control of the terrain without wasting troops. That is, maintaining strength without exaggeration. For the female unconscious, this activates the intermittent dopamine mechanism, moments of intensity followed by space. She feels she needs to do something to maintain her energy, and this creates a cycle of increasingly strong desire. This is where her psyche begins to project fantasy, imagine possibilities, foresee scenarios. And this imagination is what opens the way to the next pillar, the projection of fantasy, where desire ceases to be rational and transforms into an internal image. Women's fantasies rarely originate from the body. They originate from the mind, from the internal images she creates when a man awakens something in her that she herself doesn't understand. Jung said that the female psyche is full of silent stories, repressed desires, hidden shadows that emerge when they find the right stimulus. And this stimulus is almost never explicit, it's suggested. That's why the man who understands politics guided by reality knows that he doesn't need to show strength. He needs to insinuate. He doesn't need to declare desire. He needs to provoke imagination. Machiavelli would say that the calculated use of force is always more powerful than blatant force. The end justifies the means when the end is to activate the unconscious and the means is suggestion. She fantasizes about the man who could be dangerous, but chooses not to be. She fantasizes about the man who masters his own energy to the point of never exaggerating. She fantasizes about what he doesn't say. The mind fills in the gaps, and the gaps are where desire grows. When Jung speaks of the shadow, he is referring precisely to this dynamic, that which she does not acknowledge but desires, that which she does not verbalize but seeks, that which she does not say but feels. Most women will never say aloud that they prefer a man with emotional intensity, with a touch of symbolic danger, with virtu, but they all react to it. Machiavelli would explain this phenomenon by saying that people rarely admit their real motivations. They only respond to what awakens their instincts. Therefore, the man who understands this mechanism does not try to please her ego. He converses with the unconscious. He uses silence, a firm gaze, a stable presence, small tensions, long pauses, punctual touches. All of this activates projection. She begins to imagine what it would be like to be with him, how he would touch her, how he would lead her. Even without anything concrete happening, the desire grows, because the imagined for the female psyche is often more intense than the real. The secret isn't in showing, it's in allowing her to imagine. That's what differentiates manipulation from psychological mastery. Manipulation is force, mastery awakens. The man who activates fantasy doesn't lie, doesn't deceive, doesn't play a character. He simply allows his energy to speak before words. He is the mirror of the fantasies she never verbalizes, precisely because he operates from real human nature, not idealized romances. He doesn't use excessive exposure, he uses tension. He doesn't use promises, he uses presence. He doesn't use urgency, he uses rhythm. His own loyal armies, self-control, discipline, ambition, reinforce this internal image. And when she senses that he carries strength, but chooses moderation, power but chooses calm, intensity but chooses direction, her mind projects the entire story on its own. It is this projection that prepares the ground for the next pillar, the selective management of reward, where desire ceases to be just fantasy and becomes an emotional experience. If there's one element to which female desire responds almost immediately, it's the unpredictability of reward. The human brain, and especially the female brain in an effective context, is driven by intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes casinos thrive and forbidden romances addictive. Jung would call this the activation of the primitive psyche. Machiavelli would call it politics guided by reality, not by the romantic ideals that society tries to impose. The man who understands this stops functioning like an endless tap of attention, because too much attention becomes emotional anesthesia. He begins to offer calibrated intensity, moments of total presence followed by intentional spaces. This isn't disappearing, it's allowing her to miss him. It's using constant adaptability to balance giving and absence. And yes, the end justifies the means when the end is to keep the magnetic field alive, not through manipulation, but through emotional intelligence. The mistake most men make is believing that more is always better. More messages, more compliments, more closeness, more time together. But in desire, the opposite works. The more predictable the reward, the less the emotional impact. This applies to everything from relationships to business. If the boss praises every day, the praise loses value. If the app sends notifications every 5 minutes, it becomes noise. Similarly, if a man offers affection, attention, validation, and presence without moderation, her instinctive side becomes desensitized. Machiavelli would explain this as the inefficient use of force. When a leader wastes his best weapons without strategy, he loses respect. A man who manages his energy, however, keeps his own loyal armies, time, focus, intensity, only for chosen moments. He creates emotional intervals that allow her imagination to fill the gaps. And when imagination comes into play, desire grows on its own. Managing rewards isn't about playing hard to get. It's about giving meaning to what's offered. When a man knows how to calibrate his energy, he creates a powerful effect. She feels the need to actively participate in the connection. She needs to invest, she needs to conquer, and everything that requires emotional investment becomes valuable. Jung would explain this as the awakening of the principle of mystical participation. She is not a spectator, she is an agent. Machiavelli would say that this prevents her from becoming indifferent, the greatest enemy of any leadership. Strategic unpredictability creates dopamine, space creates longing, and well-placed intensity creates bonding. It's not emotional torture, it's relational intelligence, and it is precisely here that many confuse mastery with manipulation. Therefore, before we move on to the final part, the difference between manipulation and strategy, it is essential to understand that this entire process only works if there is inner truth. Otherwise, it becomes theater, and theater sustains nothing. One of the biggest misconceptions men have when they begin to study female desire is believing that it's all manipulation. And it's not. Manipulation requires lies, trickery, disguise, theatricality. It requires a man to create a mask to hide his true self. Machiavelli himself said that manipulating through falsehood is always a risk, because nothing sustained by an appearance of virtue lasts when reality arrives. Politics guided by reality doesn't work with illusions. It works with an understanding of real human nature. Psychological mastery is the opposite of manipulation. It's awareness. It's knowing how things work, not to harm someone else, but to stop harming oneself. A man manipulates when he tries to control a woman. The psychological master controls himself. Manipulation is a desperate attempt to be loved. Mastery is the elegant calm of avoiding being hated by oneself. And this difference changes everything in masculine energy, and therefore, in the desire it awakens. Manipulation is when a man tries to manufacture reactions. Mastery is when he understands the natural reactions of the feminine psyche and chooses to act in alignment with them. Jung would say that manipulation operates from the unintegrated shadow, that impulse to control, lie, hide, dominate to avoid rejection. Mastery, on the other hand, operates from presence, one's own loyal armies, self-control, clarity, purpose. Machiavelli would speak of the calculated use of force, not the force to pressure, but the force to govern oneself. The manipulator fears that without tricks, no one will choose him. The master knows that the end justifies the means when the means are authenticity and consistency. One uses anxiety as a strategy, the other uses constant adaptability as a foundation. The manipulator tries to appear confident, the master becomes confident. One creates chaos, the other creates direction, and direction is irresistible to the feminine. The last difference is the most important. Manipulation steals energy, mastery restores it. A woman emerges exhausted from a manipulative man, confused, drained, carrying guilt that isn't hers. But she emerges alive from the presence of a man who masters his own energy. Psychological mastery creates space for her to choose to invest, desire, project fantasy. The manipulator tries to lead the woman, the master leads himself. That's why every strategy taught so far only works when it stems from inner truth and not from a desire for control. The woman already follows these instincts naturally. The man simply becomes aware. And when this awareness settles in, he finally understands that female desire is not something to force, it's something to inspire. And it is from this inspiration that the artist man is born, the one who sees love and desire as profound languages. Languages he can learn to touch. And that leads us to the last topic, where this journey transforms into purpose, becoming the artist of desire. In the end, a man realizes that passion isn't born from comfort, it's born from tension. Not that toxic tension that drains, but the vital tension that moves the soul. Jung would say that without tension between opposites, there is no psychic energy. Machiavelli would add that without contrast, there is no perception of power. The man who understands feminine desire stops trying to prove something and begins to observe. He notices patterns, rhythms, impulses, reactions. He learns to read silence. He learns to read absence. He learns to read what is not said. He understands that real human nature always triumphs over idealized romantic fantasy, and that politics guided by reality creates deeper connections than any perfect discourse. Instead of trying to fit into the mold of the perfect man, he becomes the present man, the lucid man, the man who knows that his virtue is built daily in the habits he maintains, in the limits he upholds, in the emotional strength he cultivates. And when this awareness arrives, it seems almost unfair how everything becomes clearer. The artist of desire doesn't manipulate, he interprets. He observes like a musician observes a melody, like a painter observes shadows and light, like a leader observes terrain before moving his troops. He understands that the end justifies the means only when the end is true, and the means are consistent with who he is. He knows how to use emotional force in a calculated way, not to dominate, but to inspire. He creates intensity without pressuring. He creates space without abandoning. He creates direction without controlling. And thus, he becomes the man whom the feminine recognizes, not for his body nor for his money, but for the magnetism that arises from within. Jung would call this individuation, becoming whole. Machiavelli would call it strategic stability, standing firm even when the world tries to mold you. And when this inner strength becomes visible, feminine desire responds automatically, as if recognizing something ancestral it has always sought. In the end, it all comes down to one question. Will you be governed by indifference, or will you govern your own energy? The man who doesn't understand desire is dragged down by insecurity, by the messages he sends without thinking, by impulses that destroy his worth. But the conscious man realizes that constant adaptability is not weakness, it's an art. He observes, learns, adjusts. He corrects posture, rhythm, silence, intention. He strengthens his own loyal armies, routine, focus, ambition, self-control. And little by little, he transforms into the kind of man who doesn't follow feminine desire. He awakens. He doesn't beg for connection. He inspires. He doesn't seek validation. He emanates value. And when he finally recognizes this, he sees that all the knowledge he has built up to this point is not theory. It's practice. It's life. And it inevitably opens up the final question that connects all the learning. Which of these 5 pillars is the most difficult for you to master? In the end, it all comes down to a simple decision. Are you going to continue living on autopilot, facing rejections, conversations without impact, and connections that never go beyond "you're cool"? Or are you finally going to take control of your own psychological power? Because desire isn't luck, it isn't genetics, it isn't mystical charisma, it's emotional strategy. It's understanding that politics guided by reality always wins over the pretty stories taught by movies. And now you know this. You've seen how mystery, silent authority, challenge, fantasy, and selective reward change everything. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will he continue to be the predictable, easy, always available man? The one that the female subconscious discards without even realizing it? Or will you start today to integrate the pillars that Machiavelli and Jung pointed out and become the man who can be loved, feared, and deeply desired without ever having to force anything? Be honest with yourself. Which of the 5 pillars is the most difficult for you to master? What part of your energy are you afraid to embrace? And what would your life be like if you finally stopped sabotaging yourself? Think about it. Write in the comments. Change begins right there, with the first act of awareness. And if you want to continue learning everything that ordinary men never learn about desire, the female psyche, male energy, and the dark art of psychological seduction, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Here you'll learn how to master the game that no one taught you how to play.